He said to me the one day, he's like, you look at this lot. He says, all these people that come in and out every day, he says, you're one of about 6 that actually talk to me, like actually have a conversation. A lot of customers will respect you more if you own up to it. I mean, I flooded a building bad. I'm like, he comes up the roof or up onto the room and I'm squeegeeing water down the drain. And I'm like, dude, it was me.
Hola, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Reliable HVACR podcast. I appreciate everybody for tuning in, watching this live. If you guys join the live chat, I appreciate you guys interacting with me and the guest. If you guys are on YouTube, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to the new channel and help the podcast out by wherever you listen to on Spotify, Apple Podcast, making sure you leave a 5-star review, hopefully, and get the podcast out to more people. And I want to give a quick shout out to the sponsors that help support the podcast. If you guys are interested in the software that we use to help my business, you can go check out Jobber. If you guys follow the link in the description or go to getjobber.com/reliablehvacr, you will get a free trial and discount and see if it can help you out. I also want to thank VETO Pro Pack, best tool bags out in the market. You guys already know I'm a VETO person. I have a VETO setup for everything in my van. So if you guys want to check out the link in the description, you can go to their website, go see all the bags that they have, go check out my customer profile that's there, and show your support. And I want to thank our newest sponsor, BOSCH. They are changing the game with their inverter heat pumps. BOSCH IDS Lite 15 SEER system has it all, combining quality inverter technology and standard efficiency at an affordable price point. The outdoor unit is available in 24K, 36K, and 60K BTU capacity, and it can be paired with either a wall or ceiling air handler. Gives you plenty of installation options. The BOSCH IDS Lite will be equipped with a low GWP R54B refrigerant by this fall. Visit boschhomecomfort.us to learn more. On today's episode, we have the HVAC Dad, HVAC.Animation. You can follow him on Instagram. I'll be sure to leave everything in the description down below. He's another chiller guy, so we'll obviously talk about industrial work, taking a pay cut to get into HVAC, his kids getting into the trades, and owning up to screw-ups, to the customer. So without further ado, enjoy the episode. I've had a lot of guests from Canada, so I just asking.
We're having it's pretty warm end of August or 1st of September. So it's been nice. Yeah. We're not Texas heat, that's for sure, but
I was going to say, what's warm to you?
If we get like 30 degrees, that's pretty hot for us up here.
Jeez. Okay.
I'm not sure what that's in Fahrenheit, but
yeah, I got to do the math. But I've talked to like Jay and some of the other guys up there, and it's like, because every region is built differently, right? Just like the living conditions and stuff. Because here, like, everything's air conditioned, everything built for the heat. Some places don't even have air conditioning, like schools don't have air conditioning in some places, right. Like all that stuff up north. And it's like when it does get hot, that's when you are like, your heat advisory is different from our heat advisory too.
For sure. A couple degrees off, I'm sure.
Yeah, because over here it's like, I don't know what it is in Celsius, but usually if it goes over 110, that's when you're like, oh crap, like that's hot. So like, and like right now, are you going to do the math?
Yeah. So yeah, 30 degrees, like 86 F. So that's like probably your winter time.
We don't even, yeah, I was gonna say we don't even get that low during our summer.
Well, I think when you guys had that deep freeze a few years ago, I mean, that was tough when you guys got, wasn't it Texas got a snow like North Texas there a couple years ago?
We were not prepared for that whatsoever, and we lost power for days, and I think maybe over a week or two.
Yeah, actually, my nephew went down. He's the linesman, so he was down there helping out.
Oh, really?
Storm. Yeah.
Trying to help us with our.
Yeah, they get sent down somehow. Their company gets called down. Like he loves the storm stuff because it's good money for him and stuff. And they just throw a whack of crews down there, and they work with the local utilities, and away they go. Yeah.
Yeah, come and save the day because our grid, if the wind blows too hard, our power goes out.
Yeah, well, especially if you get snow and then all that weight on the lines and stuff like that. If it's wet snow sticking to the lines, it can tear
Well,
the
we
lines
don't.
down for
Snow is like once a decade here, and it's the kind of snow that you get in the morning. And if you see it, if you're up early enough, you'll see it by noon or whenever the sun comes out. It's all melted. That's the
right,
snow.
right.
That's the snow that we get.
Yeah, okay, that'd be all right. I could handle that kind of winter.
Yeah, it freaked me out because I went to the AHR in Chicago, right? And I don't know if you go to those or any of those.
I haven't yet, but I heard the last one in Chicago was pretty icy. Yeah.
I went up there, I was like in shock because I had never seen like snow stay there the
Hmm.
whole day, right? Like I said,
Hmm.
usually when we get it, we've gotten a good amount for what I guess what Texas is. But during the day it'll melt. So when I went up
Right.
there and I saw it, I'm like, man, this like the sun came out and everything. I'm like, man, it's so cold here that it never melted. Like I had never seen that before. And
Hmm.
trying to get through like going to the awards show, that was the coldest night because it was Sunday night.
Yeah, but as long as you're not dealing with 8 months of it.
Oh no, I was like so happy to come back.
Well, because up here, well, where I live, anyways, I'm like in the Toronto area.
Hmm.
Definitely don't get the winters like we used to, but it's once October, November hits, it starts getting kind of cold and crappy and damp, and yeah, and it seems like April, March, April, that's where things really kind of start turning around, being nice and up
Yeah.
over 70 degrees consistently. So like last summer was really not that hot at all. And so the cooling equipment is funny because, we don't have the same demand for cooling that you guys do, but there was a lot of places that, they had two chillers, ran one machine, all summer long, didn't really need that second machine because we didn't have the humidity and stuff. But this past summer was pretty hot. Things were kind of back to,
In the winter, like I said, if it doesn't get too cold, you just turn off the AC. You might run the fan or something, but the buildings stay like at a reasonable condition. I mean, a kitchen will run the AC no matter what because
yeah, for sure.
I do a lot of kitchen work and stuff.
Yeah.
But like the front or the where they have their parties, all that stuff in the restaurants, like it just depends. But yeah, we don't really see a lot of heating anymore, and we don't even see gas heating anymore. Everybody's electrified over here,
Yeah, I
and
heard that's a bit of a trend now. They're trying to push the electrification, but up here, it's like there's so much heating demand.
yeah,
I look at these couple of buildings and they've got electric boilers and they're on a 1600 amp breaker, two of them, right?
oh
So, I mean, to
yeah,
run that to take a building that isn't and convert it to electric, I mean, to throw another 3200 amps into a building for service, like I don't know how they think they're gonna
it's
just
tough
how the
because
grid can support it.
they want us to convert. They push it and the rebates and everything with anything like even vehicles and stuff. And then like I just told you, if our conditions here, whether it's high winds or any bad storms that come through, our power goes out. I'm like, how do you want us to
Right.
go electric and we can't even keep the power on? But I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. This podcast is presented by Local. Local works tirelessly to help HVAC contractors rank higher on Google. They use an attack methodology to make sure that contractors dominate their local service areas and increase their market share and generate higher revenue. Reach out to Local at localhq.com/reliable. Mention me or the Reliable HVACR podcast, and you'll get 2 months of SEO for free. You work on a lot of big equipment, right? So do you do like the chiller type of work or what kind of work do you do?
Yeah, I work on a little bit of everything, but chillers is kind of my thing now. I've kind of stayed on that. We're a fairly large company, and so yeah, I tend to do the chillers and more the larger buildings. We don't do any residential, so mostly the commercial office towers and condos and stuff like that. So yeah, chillers are kind of, they're running in the summertime. The wintertime, we're doing the maintenance if we got to tear down or anything like that. You can see in the chillers the way they're running in the summertime, how much less load there is in a building compared to pre-COVID.
So no residential. I don't like doing it either, but I stick to light commercial.
Yeah, the only residential we do is like for maybe the owner of a building or something like that. We're trying to help them out.
Yeah,
So,
same here.
but
Like
yeah,
I always go in, to work somewhere, and then they're like, "Oh, they start telling me I got this problem with my own AC at my own house and this and that," and I'm like I just personally don't like doing it. So like I'm like, okay, like I try not to volunteer, and I'll
yeah,
just pass
great.
pass it off to like a buddy or something.
Yeah, we have a few guys that do some side jobs. Some of the younger guys, right? Still hungry for money and that. So they, feed them their number or whatever. But
It's funny because yeah, like I don't know, because I just recently had to recommend one of my friends for residential, and it's just like I've thought about it, like you said, like side work, that kind of stuff. But like you said, it's usually the younger guys that want to do all that. I'm already set. I don't want to be working any more than I have to, right?
exactly, yeah. But I don't know, it got tough because you had set it up. Okay, I'll go and check it out the one night, and then sure enough, that's the night you get a late service call or something, and then once the kids came around, we were busy with their sports and all that kind of stuff. So it's like I think people go through phases, and you want that money, so you're willing to work those extra hours. But then it gets
Yeah,
down to the point where you're making a good wage and happy doing your steady-ish hours. As steady as the HVAC trade can be.
we have a family business, so like in the beginning it was hectic hours, and now I do enjoy, but like I can't get back to that. I don't know what you call it, like a mindset or that way of working anymore. Like when I started, and like even right now when we get a lot of work, I'm like, man, I wish back then I would have been able to handle like so many calls during the week. I
Yeah,
used to
yeah,
I
sure.
used to be okay working weekends, and I didn't
Yeah.
care if I worked late or anything like that. But now I'm like, oh, like I turn away work sometimes just because
I used
like
to thrive having 4 calls backed up, and now it's like, oh my god, I'm getting a call after 2 o'clock. What the hell? Like, what is he doing to
uh
me here?
yeah, the afternoon calls. I had like three come in the other day. I was so like upset. And I'm
Wow.
like, Matt, like it's a good problem to have, running your own business, but like I don't have that anymore, like in me. Like I have kids too. I have two kids, so like I want my weekends with the kids. I want my, be home for dinner, stuff like that. And
Hmm.
it's just funny because I've talked to people recently, and it's like a progression. Like when you start, you're gung ho, you want to do everything, and that's the way you should be, right? Like learning after work, and trying to get or volunteer if you can, for those jobs, and do as much as you can when you start. That's when you hustle, you run out there, you do everything you can, and then it pays off later, right? Because you get like you said, a better wage, a better position, and then you can be a little bit more picky, even if you work for a company, right? Because like you are doing pretty well wherever you're at, and your hours are better than what they were. I'm assuming.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've got more guys now. We've gotten pretty large. When I started with this company, we were, the two owners and myself were the only licensed guys. We had a handful of apprentices. So, back then, when I started there, it was like in the hottest summer I think we've ever had. I came from a company that we had like one service call on a hottest day to this place, and I was just running. I'm thinking, man, what did I do? Why did I come to this company, right? But anyways, yeah, look at me now.
Hey man, you got to work to get what you want, or where you want to be. So you're
Yeah.
doing good now.
Yeah, it's been good. I've learned a ton of stuff over the years, and um,
Has it always
yeah,
been like a heavy commercial company?
yep. The one owner was like a fridge guy
Okay.
originally, and the other guy I worked with at a previous company at Train.
Hmm.
So basically, the one owner, he would basically design the boxes like freezers and whatever, and then they'd build them, and then they'd maintain like through maintenance contract or whatever and service. So that was kind of his side of the business. And then when the other owner joined on, they, it was more comfort cooling, and that's when we got into more office towers and that kind of thing. Um, and then we merged with another company, and he was more the condo side. So there's kind of three sides of the company, or three, different sides of the trade coming together. So yeah,
Um,
it's been good.
before I forget, speaking of kids, well, HVAC.Animation, where did that come from?
Just tried to pick a name when I signed up for Instagram years ago. Um, Tried to have something with HVAC in it, and yeah, I don't know. So hard to pick a name. I don't know. And be somewhat creative and somewhat, but yeah, I kind of tag myself as HVAC dad as well because
Yeah, that's
my
what I had
one's
seen
in
too.
HVAC trade, and yeah, another son's in electrical. So
Wait, how many kids do you have?
I have three. Yeah. So my daughter,
Okay.
she's an EA with the school board, and yeah, the two boys are in the trades. My one son works with me, and the other one's a different, like, electrical company doing fire alarm and stuff like that.
Oh man, I didn't even think they were going to be that old. Okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
uh, so they followed. Did you teach them, the trades, or how did they get into that?
Well, we just kind of, the kids grew up around motors and stuff and fixing stuff. Um, so they just,
Just because,
yeah, and
like,
here you
I have two. One is, man, he's about to turn 11. It's getting to that scary age, but
go.
I have one that's 10 and one that's 8, and they're somewhat interested in the stuff that I do. So that's why I'm curious. Like, they were around a lot with you, and then they kind of showed interest in it.
Yeah, they just like, my father's like originally an auto mechanic, and my brother, he works on boats. Like, he's a marine mechanic, like a small engine marine mechanic.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
boats is his thing. So I mean, I grew up. My brother was fixing lawnmowers, and we just had older stuff. And if you wanted to get it to run and you wanted to ride, you had to make it work. So we just grew up fixing stuff, and kind
That's
of
the
carried on.
best.
And my kids see me working on stuff and drag them out in the garage, and
That's
so
a,
yeah, they've
that's
always
that's the
understood what
best.
tools are. And
That's the best thing, because my grandfather was a mechanic. He taught all his. I have My dad has 9 siblings, so he taught a lot of them how to work on cars and all that.
Mhm.
So I grew up around that kind of stuff, being in garages, and my dad and my uncles really liked, like, the classic cars and fixing them up and, getting them. Well, I had one uncle that went crazy, would customize the cars and all that, but, like, I grew up around that without even, like, knowing, that was, like, a thing, like the trades or, any of
Yeah,
that. Just it was just fun, but I was
right.
like, "Man, I grew up around it, like, I know this stuff." Like, I was always good at fixing things too, and I'm like, "Okay, now I need to, look into it and get into it."
Yeah, like, if you understand tools and have a good, like, mechanical aptitude, for sure, it makes it a lot easier because so many people just, they never even know how to put a chain back on their bike and stuff.
Yeah,
So,
that's what I'm talking about,
or
like, with my
not
kids, like
involved.
I would like them to know little things, like you said, fixing a bike, or when they're older, fixing a flat tire, or, like, anything like that, being handy around the house. That's what I want them to know. Like, if they wanna get in the trades, that's up to them, but, be able to know how things work, and being able to maybe fix it yourself.
Yeah. Well, I think the schools are pushing the trades a little more now, which is good.
Yeah.
Because when I went through school, they really weren't. Like, I was really kind of disappointed in my graduation. They're saying, oh, congratulations, these people that got the college of their choice and their university or whatever. They never once said, congratulations to people that actually have a job and going to start making money and that kind of thing, right? Because I went straight
Yeah.
out of high school. I finished high school on Friday, went to work Monday, and I've never, missed it since. It's, and different guys that I went through school with, they went to college and dropped out or whatever and had all kinds of debt. And, they always loved being with me because I had money and I had my car and, it was great just working straight. Like, I was,
That
graduated at
that's
17.
that's one thing that I'll say, because I come from, like, I live in Texas, but I live in an area that's like a low cost of living. I love it here. I'm never gonna move, but I the wages here are not as high as, like, other states or areas, but, like, you gotta remember that that's all compensated, right? So, like, our low wages here is because, like, I bought a house, I bought vehicles, I could do whatever I wanted because I had a steady job and a decent pay, right? So, like, that's one thing, like, you don't go, because I was the same like everybody else. Like you were told to go to college, get a degree in something else. That was all pushed. But then you have all the loan debts, all the other stuff you got to pay back, um, versus just getting out and learning skill, getting into the trades. You got a job right away, you get paychecks right away, and like you don't have anything to pay off other than your tools and whatever that tool addiction turns into, right? I mean, that's a whole other story.
That's not an addiction.
It's a necessity.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
But
But
yeah,
yeah,
like
no, it
that's
was,
the only thing you have to deal with. Like unless you open up a business, I mean, there's money involved in that. But like other than that, you get out there and you start making money. That's your money. I mean, you don't pay. I did go to school, but I had financial aid, and I went because I wanted to. It just took me a while to realize I should just do refrigeration or whatever it was.
I did an electrical apprenticeship, and I was in that for like 8 years.
Was
And then
that
that kind of
out of high school
So straight out
or
of high school, I worked for this company, and it was a smaller company, and well, it wasn't too small. I guess it was like 20 or 30 guys, and kind of this small town I grew up in. There was like 9 of us that worked there, and the rule kind of was if you're from this town and one of the guys will vouch for you, you're in. So I got
okay?
there in the summer and started back then. Like the refrigeration really wasn't what it is now. So our guys that did air conditioning and whatever, they were just licensed electricians. So um, I wanted to get some sort of a trade. So I just apprenticed under them and did my apprenticeship with them. But this company was kind of everything. Like I learned sheet metal, I learned gas piping. That's when I got my gas license. They manufactured air handling units, custom air handling units. So when I wasn't busy in the field, they put me in the shop. I'd be wiring the panels. Basically, I could weld the bases, I could fabricate the panels, assemble the unit, put the electrical in it, I could paint it, and even did some deliveries sometimes. Like I'd, load it on with a forklift and drive it to site. So yeah, I was kind of one of those all around guys. So it worked out good because it was job security. I mean, we were going through a
Oh yeah.
recession at the time in the early 90s. And, I was getting more experience. Guys like working with me. I could kind of do a little bit of everything. So yeah, it really got me through that recession time because that company got really slow, and I was still on there.
I mean, my dad always had to work, so I just saw it firsthand growing up because he was also electrician, then got into food service industry because now he fixes like ovens and stoves and grills, like all the commercial kitchen equipment. So I mean, that's another thing is you never, because even during that whole 2020 year, pandemic stuff, we were off for a little bit just because everybody was trying to figure out what the rules were and all
Yeah,
that. But
you knew what
like,
to do or what you could do. Yeah.
yeah, so like it took a few days to figure that out, and then we were back on the road because like we still needed, you still need air conditioning, refrigeration, all that stuff. Like and that goes for any trade. I'm sure any trade that you were in, if you were an electrician, plumber, whatever it was, like you're gonna get consistent work versus because in my last one of my last episodes, I talked to somebody like right now AI is so scary because it's taking like everybody's, anything that has to do with computers, like it can do
Yeah, not
their
taking our
job.
jobs.
No, it can't do ours, but it can like if anybody does anything on computers, like it can basically do their job. Today's episode is also brought to you by NAVIEN. If you haven't seen it yet, NAVIEN has entered the HVAC space in a big way with the new NPF hydro furnace. This hydronic forced air furnace delivers industry-leading variable capacity operation from 15 to 100% in both natural and propane configurations. You can learn more at navieninc.com. I also want to thank DIVERSITECH. They simplify your work. They have everything a contractor needs to complete a job. That goes from equipment mounting, condensate, management, tools, maintenance chemicals, electrical components, indoor air quality, and much more. They have different branches under the same umbrella. More than likely, you're already using some of their products or tools. So go check out DIVERSITECH.com, and it's your one-stop shop for everything HVAC.
Like I say, that company I worked for, we did all the automation controls for Train and this other company, HTS. So that's kind of how I transitioned into that when I left my first company. And then I went to work directly for Train in their automation department. But then it was like a couple of years, I kind of got stale doing the same thing, and I was either going to leave and do a, either like go to a true automation company or something. But one of the guys, like actually one of the owners of this company that I work for now, he was in the service department. He's like, "Don't leave." He says, "Why don't you just come to the service department?" So, and that's when that's kind of when I transitioned to the HVAC side of things and started my
Mm.
apprenticeship. Took a 6.5 hour or $6.50 an hour pay cut, and started over again and did the air conditioning apprenticeship.
So
So
you took a pay cut to do HVAC.
I did, yeah, yeah. It was $6.50 an hour.
Did you see
So
like yourself, like did you envision like what it could be, or did you just like why take the pay cut?
it was more for the future because the company I was working for, like Train, was union. So I
Okay.
got into the union. So more benefits, the pension, that kind of thing. And just kind of looking at where even the pay scale goes to versus an automation tech. And as far as electrical, I never had any interest in being like on the high rise construction, right, where you just get hauled in and
Mm.
pull wire and run conduit and core line for 6 8 weeks or months
Yeah.
or whoever they say, "Oh, we need 12 guys for 6 months," and then you're gone, right? I was never had any interest in that. I did enjoy the automation, right, because
Yeah.
to see a lot of interesting stuff, and especially changeovers. That's where I learned all my pneumatic stuff, and
No, because
it's just
like I get asked a lot about the pay, right? And like you said, like you need to look at I guess your growth, what they offer us, like you said, as far as benefits or anything like that. But there's a lot of things to consider because everybody's always asking me like, how much do you make? Like they want to know like what they make when they start. Is it a good job? Is it this and that? And I'm like if you're new to it, like if you're coming from another trade or like you're getting out of high school, whatever it is, like you're not gonna make much. Like that's just reality, right? You're getting your foot
yeah,
in the door, and then you're
start
gonna,
low.
and
Yeah.
then you have the chance to move up pretty quickly if you just commit to it.
hmm Yeah, if you're in the union, like up here, it's fixed rate. So there's a certain rate
Yeah.
for the first term apprentice, when it's a 5 year apprenticeship. So, it's kind of set. If you're working non-union, a lot of companies up here really do try and follow that union pay scale. Like I used to wire the panels in these custom air handler units. So I understood relay logic, and yeah, it was a pretty easy transition. And I had a pretty good mechanical aptitude to begin with, and I'd done a lot of refrigeration with that first company. Again, like I said, they were our electricians were the HVAC guys. So what was interesting is I didn't understand back at the first company what I was doing, and then it wasn't until like you hit second, third year, and you're like, oh yeah, that's why that guy said to do it this way.
Mm.
So a lot of stuff kind of came through, but I did have experience. I knew what air conditioning was, the basic principles of it, and that kind of thing. So
That's
I was.
kind of why I lean on my dad sometimes because he has that electrician background, and I was like, that's probably one of my weak points. Sometimes I've gotten so much better at it recently, like the past few years, but when I started and for a long time, like the electric part, the electricity part of it is what always messed me up, wiring and all that.
Yeah,
And
a lot of guys get intimidated by it, and if you
yeah,
really kind of just break it down, it's not. Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't find it that it's harder now because everything's boards. But back in the day, like when it was a lot of relay logic, I felt it was kind of for troubleshooting wise.
I don't
I'd
know
show
why
up.
that just always got me when I started. Like that was always, I was like, I know how this system works back to front, everything else, but
Mm-hmm.
something wasn't coming on or something. So I kind of leaned on him, like, how does this work? How does that work? And it's just understanding things, right? Like you said, like, I mean, obviously I knew how to read a schematic. That's an important part of it is going through the schematic. I knew the symbols, what they meant. So I had all that. I know some people get lost on that part of it. I'm like, just look at the schematic. If you understand the symbols, and a lot of times it tells you underneath what it means, like
Mm-hmm.
you'll get it, right? You'll figure it out. I just had trouble like troubleshooting bad parts at that time. Like, and then like you said, right now everything's boards too. So you got to figure out how to, you know,
Yeah.
you if you're not good at diagnosing that stuff, you misdiagnose a board, you go put in a new board, it still doesn't work, you're screwed. So
Yeah, that's the tough part. Yeah. But even still, I don't know. I tell a lot of the young guys too. I'm like, just because it's new doesn't mean it works. You know, they're
no,
like, oh, it doesn't work. It says it really seems like it's this part, but it's not working. He says, but I put a new one in. I'm like, maybe it doesn't work. Like it's, you know, new parts
yeah, I
are,
just had that
a way to
conversation.
do it.
So, I had just had that conversation with somebody, and they're like, "No, I just it ended up being a bad board out of the box, right?" And sometimes that happens. That's why, like, I mean, if you double check and you're confident in your troubleshooting, which, like, I always tell people, like, as long as go through your basics and you kind of have a good understanding, like, be confident in your diagnosing and whatever it is, because I used to second guess myself. I've had bad compressors out of the box. I mean, it
Hmm.
doesn't happen often, right? It's only happened like twice, but I've had that
Yeah.
happen. Bad boards. Recently, I was chasing my tail because I had a bad transducer on a new walk-in box, right? And I'm like, no, this thing has to be right. It's new. It's a computer. Like I trusted it. Chased my
Hmm.
tail, and then I finally figured out it was like 20 psi off or something. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
like sometimes it happens.
I used to do a lot of the new equipment startup when I was a train. So yeah, you get a lot of wonky stuff on the new equipment, and the things that were the hardest to diagnose were when they miswired the plugs. It's
I've
like
heard
there's like a
that.
plug with 10 wires in it, and two of them were mixed up. Those are the worst because just it does wonky stuff that you don't expect. And I used to call tech support all the time, and they're you hear them flipping through the pages, and it's like, dude, this is not something that's just in your book. Like I need something where someone else had a problem and call back and say, listen, if somebody has this, it's this that's the
That
stuff I'm looking for.
Oh, I love that because I just recently, or not too long ago, had that, and I called in tech support, and that's usually why I call tech support, right? Not because I need somebody going through the manual or whatever.
Yeah, yeah,
Like I've already looked through
exactly.
it.
For the manual, I wouldn't have called you, right? Like,
Yeah, because I don't need anything that's going to be in the manual or anything, especially nowadays, because you can look up almost anything on any equipment. So, like,
yeah,
usually when
yeah.
I call, it's because I want to know what issues others are having with this, right? So when I
Hmm.
called, it was for like a reach and cooler, and I told them, I'm like, this controller is doing like this weird stuff. I can't get the unit to come back on, and then it was flashing codes that were not in the manual either. So I called and they're like, "Oh, that means," he told me, he's like, "It's not in the manual, but it means this." And he's like, "You know what? We had issues with that controller. We have since, it's obsolete now. There's a new one." And like, that's what I'm calling for. Like, what issues have you heard? And I always tell people that's kind of the reason, because I never used to call tech support, because I was like, I know a system back to front. I don't need somebody like, you know, babying me through it or whatever you want to call it. Like I need, but like
Tech power at line one and line two.
I know I hated that. So like that's why I never called. But then I realized you call tech support usually either to, confirm things back and forth, like talk it out, or they're gonna tell you what issues they've seen since that unit's been out, because other people are gonna call in. That's what you call tech support for.
Yeah, and there's good and bad tech support guys too. Like I had this problem with this Wiesmann boiler, and I'm explaining to the guy, and he's like, do this, and I'm like, yeah, I did that, and all of a sudden he's like, wait a second, what do you mean, whatever, right? And he's like, go down to like this panel, whatever, and check this wire, pull this wire off, and it turns out when they upgraded the controls like 15 years ago, they switched two of the wires. So now the thing like basically would just, and it's weird how sometimes it would load up and other times it wouldn't. But yeah, just because this like B and W wire were switched. But
Um,
again, this guy knew his stuff. Like he'd been in the trade for years and he was on the tech support line and yeah. So I mean, there's
those are the
like say there's
best.
good and bad tech guys for sure. There's some that
Yeah.
just understand how to, they plug in the question and their software spits out, have you checked this? And but like
Yeah,
I say, you
saying
can find that on YouTube now. Like
oh yeah, and that's why I said I hate those, because I call and I'm like, I get I don't have much patience. Like I hate to say it, but I don't have much patience, right?
Your wits end to begin with when you're calling them and you're like, listen, I don't want to call you, but
Yeah,
hopefully you've got something for me.
and when they is the breaker on? Did you check power here? And I'm like, yes, I already did all that crap. Like, tell me what I need to know, right?
Assume I'm looking for the needle in the haystack here. Like, what's your weird notes that said this one time? Yeah,
Yeah. Even at the supply house, I always run to the guy at the counter that I know has been in the trade for like 20 years. And I'm like,
yeah.
look, will this work? How can we do this? I work on a lot of old equipment. So, like, I like to talk to him specifically because, like, all the other ones, they're kids. They're way younger than I am, right? And I'm like,
Well, there
"Mm,
isn't all those guys like in our area. There's a couple. You get your usual places where you typically go, and the center of the counter was Dean, and then everybody would just kind of fall off him. Like everybody would go to him
there
because
was
he
a
knew he
yeah, there
had
was a
business.
line at this guy that I go to."
Even just different guys that understand. Hey, you're buying this solenoid. Don't forget, you probably need this gasket or this whatever.
Yeah.
Right? Those guys are key.
Yeah,
They're
I
right
have.
first get on the site, and then you realize, oh crap, this thing doesn't come with the gasket, and you're trying to like roll up Teflon and put it around the thing to try and make it seal, and because you don't want to go back.
Oh, I
But
know. I hate making extra trips, but yeah, there's guys that remind me, and I'm like, even if I already had the part, I'm like, I appreciate that, they're thinking about that and all that. And I mean, not to bash any, supply house I go to, but yeah, sometimes I've had arguments with the kids because I'm like, no, that's not gonna work. Like, I know
mm-hmm.
your computer is telling you to tell
I
me,
know you say it's hard, but it's not.
yeah, you're telling it's your computer is like this will work. I'm like, no, it won't. Like, it won't fit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm telling you, I already know. So I've had those arguments. So, like, I like the older guys that are like, without even like looking anything up, they're like, oh, it's this part or it's this, do
Mm-hmm.
this or modify this, whatever it is. Like, and like you said, there's less and less of them now, which is a shame.
Got to bring up the young guys, make them have a passion for it, and
I know, right? Like, I know, I think it's better now. I've seen other channels that like do really good content on how to do things right. And you see a lot of these older guys go in there and they're upset that everything's online now, right? They're like, "Why are you sharing this? Why are you showing, guys how to do our job and this and that?"
mm-hmm.
And it's like, I don't know, like we need more. I mean, we need more technicians in general. And I would rather have like that resource versus like getting a guy that doesn't know anything, right? I'm like, at least he looked up a YouTube video or like tries after work to look up stuff.
Yeah, it's nice. When a guy calls you, ask him to help out or a second opinion or something. He's already done the work. He's not just on his way to the job. Okay, so I'm going to this place, and what should I look for first? It's like, well, come on, go and do what you know. You should be able to get pressures, temperatures, that kind of thing. Overall condition. And then call me. Like, try and figure it out yourself. So for me, some of the guys like it, some don't. But I do try and like when a guy calls, I try and get him to figure out the answer. So basically, so he's done what he should have done, and most guys know they better have those numbers before they call me. And then it's like, okay, so based on this, what do you think? And so that way, like, if you teach them how to use what they already know, um, help them figure it out. The next time, they can figure it out themselves. Like trying to teach them not to just use your resources first, use what you do know, kind of break it down, and then if you're stumped, then call me. That's fine. I don't have an issue. I don't have any issues helping guys. I like it.
Yeah.
Keeps me sharp and stuff, and hearing what's going on.
Yeah,
But
that's funny because when I used to call tech support when I like started in the beginning, I forgot I would forget to get my pressures or I wouldn't have that
mm-hmm.
stuff next to me and then they would get after me on the phone. I'm like, oh shit, okay. So like after that,
Yeah,
I made sure that I had everything written down or everything hooked up so I could call and be ready. Um,
that's right.
to give all my readings. And then when people call me, I always and the one thing I try to tell them is because like especially now with all the damn refrigerants that we have now, like I don't know what every pressure should be for every refrigerant, right? Just give me the
Mm-hmm.
temperatures and what's saturated and all that, and then we can go from there, right? Um, and that's just that's just what it is. You gotta have all your basics. You gotta have everything you know that like you said, because a lot of times it is your basics that's messing it up, airflow or something in the refrigeration cycle restriction. Like
Yeah,
a lot of times it's that if it's not an electrical issue, right? Like a fan gave out or something.
yeah. A lot of times it's not even the refrigerant circuit. It's that's why I like the trade because it's so there's so many things that can affect it. The refrigeration cycle just does, based on what it's given. So much of it is just but if you understand that basics, I stress to guys so many times, like, learn the basics. And it drives me crazy when like a fourth year apprentice can't draw out the 4 basic components of a refrigeration circuit. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, you need to know this, like, so it's like I teach these guys like anytime a guy works with me, I'm like, I'm sure they hate it, but I'm like, dude, what's the 4 components, the basic components of refrigeration? And it's like, especially the fourth year, and they're like stumbling. I'm like, really? Come on, like, you got to know this. You got to know the basics, know what each part of the system is supposed to be doing. And then when you have a call, you break it down. So like, you're not looking at so many things and being intimidated. You just look at it saying, okay, well, I got really high superheat. Okay, well, let's start in the evaporator first. Are we absorbing too much heat? Are we not feeding enough liquid? And then, you can look and see, based on your temperatures and pressures that you're supposed to have for me, like, are we a liquid going into the TX valve or expansion device, and that kind of thing. But if you don't understand the basics and know what the refrigerant should be or shouldn't be,
Yeah.
you're kind of, you end up chasing your tail and you're just throwing darts everywhere. It's like, and then you get intimidated, and then like the customer's coming up, hey, is this thing working yet? What's going on? The tenants
Yeah.
are complaining, or you're saying, like, I did a lot of low temp when I first started with this company, and it's tough because it's like they got thousands of dollars of product in these freezers, and the guy's like, my ice cream melts at minus 18. Like, what's going on here? I'm like, okay, I'm working on it. Like, give me a minute. But
Yeah.
but
And
yeah,
then
just
like,
understanding the basics is key for sure.
and it's what you need to start with, because I mean, that's a little scary that you said that 4-year apprentices don't know that. I didn't realize that that was that hard to grasp. When I
Well,
when I started in my school, it did take me like, I mean, I had never done HVAC whatsoever. My dad, like I said, does commercial kitchen equipment. So like when I went to school for it, it's because we wanted that as part of his company, right? So like we're partners now because I do that side of it. So that was my intention to go into school, like learning it from scratch because I didn't know it. And that did take me a while to learn what side is liquid, what side is vapor, all the, and I give them credit. They broke it down, for us. They drilled it into our head. This does this. You got liquid in this section. You got high temperature vapor, like all that stuff they went over. I finally got it. So like, going out in the field, that's what because I didn't know anything. Like when you go out in the field, experience is what's going to help you figure out those tough problems, right? But like going out, at least with my basics, I was able to do a lot just because I knew what it's supposed to do, where it's supposed to be liquid, what my
mhm.
metering device is supposed to be doing, all this stuff. That gets you out of a bind like 90% of the time. I just remembered I lost my train of thought earlier. The because when I asked you about your name and all that, the logo that you have,
Oh
right?
yeah,
Is
that's
that
right.
is that a drawing? Because I think I had seen you post about it.
Yeah, so my daughter made me, I forget if it was a birthday or a Father's Day card with that picture on it.
So
And
she
then,
drew it
yeah,
out.
kind of stuff. Yeah, she drew it out. And then basically when I kind of started my channel, I used that and sent it to a guy, and he made like an image of it, and went, yeah, so it's basically just a guy kind of juggling fire and ice. So that's where that one started. Yeah.
Yeah, I had seen it like I don't know way back when because I like I've been following you for a while, but I saw it. I'm like interesting, and then I saw the backstory because it was one of your kids that drew it. I'm like, oh, that's awesome.
Mhm.
Like that's
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah, it was, I don't know, whatever. It's one of those things. And then, I keep getting these people sending me now saying, like, all these people trying to get a logo or whatever, right? Hey, we can make you whatever logo. It's like, this one's kind of got a lot of meaning to it. So I really don't want to change it. But the only thing would be kind of cool is if someone would like animate it and actually make I could throw it at the end of my videos where he's like actually
Oh,
juggling the fire and ice or something. So that'd be kind of cool.
that'd be cool. You didn't go to school for any of this?
No, basically just everything just kind of learned on the job. So um, you get more now where there's like a pre-apprenticeship course. And I think it's a good thing for people that, have never worked with tools or anything like that, never been exposed to any of that when they're younger. So, it kind of brings everybody up to a standard and makes you a little more hireable. A lot of times those are 2-year courses. There's like a 2-year HVAC course. I think you mentioned you went through one, right?
Yeah,
Local
the
college.
ones I don't like are like the ones that are like a few weeks. I'm like, how do you learn anything?
Yeah, yeah. And it's tough for people that do kind of understand tools and that, because they do really try and bring everybody up to the same level from, nowhere. So anybody that does understand tools is like, dude, like I really have to learn what a slotted screwdriver is here and stuff like that. But I think it's good. Like up here, you tend to get your like part of your gas license. There's different levels of gas licenses up here. There's like a G3, G2, and a G1.
Oh yeah,
So
I've heard.
G3, basically your starter. Basically, you can work with somebody with a gas license, and then G2 allows you up to 400,000 BTUs, and then G1's kind of whatever. You're dangerous.
I've heard Canada has like all these other, you know, deals when you get into the trades. A little more to get through.
Yeah. So, do you guys do apprenticeships at all down there, or kind of it's just work to?
Not required.
Yeah. Get your EPA card, and that's it.
Yeah, you can just take it at the supply house.
Right. Yeah. For us, I mean, then you're a registered trade, or like tradesman. So like we've got.
Here, because I was asked about it by somebody, like there are different levels, but like honestly, just to be registered, which means you can work for anybody, they just take your money. Like as long as you pay the yearly fee, like you're registered. There's no
Yeah.
requirement.
Yeah, we just hope they're experienced enough, and I
No,
guess you can.
they call us out there after the fact, and we fix what they did.
Well, that's good for you then.
It happens often, actually. So,
Yeah, well,
uh,
I mean, there's good and bad in every trade, so you just don't know
oh,
what
I
you're
know
gonna get.
it's with everything. I mean, it's not just HVAC, but it's with everything.
Yeah, even
Is
here,
there?
like guys, since some guys are better than others, obviously, but
Yeah, just because there's a big company here that is licensed and everything doesn't mean that they're the best. Because we've gone behind those companies too, and I'm like, what the hell were they thinking here?
Mhm.
Um, so what is your favorite part of your job right now? Like, is there anything you like to work on or like to do at your job?
um, as far as equipment wise, chillers is kind of my thing. They're like big playground equipment, right? They're just big, and
I get so
I don't know.
intimidated seeing that stuff, but I love
They're kind of
watching
like,
it.
yeah, it's kind of like the I don't know, whether there's a bit of status by being a chiller guy, maybe, or but you get familiar with them, and it's still the same basic 4 components of refrigeration. It's got an evaporator, it's got a condenser, it's got an expansion device or more, and compressor. Yeah, so it's kind of the same process. It's just big and loud and intimidating.
Yeah, because
So equipment wise,
when I took my school, schooling, there was an industrial class, right? So like I did do that for one semester. Now we were hands on with everything, but obviously we cannot work on the chiller at the school. So
mhm.
they would just take us in there to look at it, kind of show us around. I'm like, man, this is like I thought it was cool, but it was never anything I would do because I knew I was going to do kitchen refrigeration. So like I think it's cool to watch. I think it's cool to see. I see a lot of guys like yourself. A lot of I think HVAC J does that too. Jason Johnson, all these guys that do it and post about
Yeah,
it. I
chiller
love
band, he's a big one too.
Chiller Ben. I've talked to him too. Uh,
Yeah.
and I'm like, man, that's awesome. I love watching it, but I'll never do it.
Yeah, if you're never exposed to it. But yeah, absorption chillers, they're kind of intimidating. That's a whole different animal.
Is that
So
something
they
you
use
work on too?
I've seen them, but no, I really, when I was a train, we had looked after a couple. So I was working with a guy, but they're, like I say, they're a different animal, right? They use heat. A lot of times they were in like a cogen plant, and they would use like the excess steam to power it, and basically just heating the calcium chloride solution makes things move around. There's really no moving parts in them. They're basically, I think there's a solution pump, and
Mm.
that's kind of it. But it's basically just boiling and evaporating. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. They're just a
Yeah,
completely different animal, and then they'll
like,
crystallize.
but you
Hmm.
see refrigeration everywhere too. I mean, that's a great thing about being in the trade is like stuff that I work on is not the same stuff you work on. It's not the same stuff that somebody else is going to work on. You see something different everywhere.
Yeah, it's such a broad trade. It can, like, say, you get these guys that specialize in low temp stuff, freezers and, kitchens and
I am
stuff,
just
like even like
appalled.
cryogenics and stuff in like labs. And,
Yeah.
you're into like cascade systems where like, where one refrigerant will cool the next part of the refrigerant to cool the next part of the refrigerant cycle. And it's down to like minus 200 degrees or whatever it is. So yeah,
That's what I was gonna
those
say.
are
Like
big.
I am appalled by those deep freezers or whatever they're called, like that get into the so far down into the negatives. And I'm just
Hmm.
like, how? Like I deal with just stuff that goes to -10 Fahrenheit, and I'm like, how does it even go colder than that? But I mean, it's out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely specialized equipment, right? That's not your average Joe isn't going to walk up and work on one of those. And critical
Oh no,
charge, like say the ones with, they use the different refrigerants in the same circuit and they just rely on them boiling off at certain points and temperatures. Yeah,
that's
that's
crazy. I
intimidating.
might go down a rabbit hole looking now, but um, yeah, because we do hospital work, but we've tried to stick to just the kitchen because they've had us up in the actual hospital because there's so much, like you said, different kinds of equipment that deals with, storing medicines or blood or like hazardous material. They've even had us do the morgue, which we try not to do anymore. But I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
all that is specialty refrigeration, and it's just, if not more important than, what you see in the grocery store.
Yeah. We used to work in a couple hospitals around here as well. We had some different equipment in there. They called it the parts cooler, and we had to make sure that was stayed
Oh,
running. And
okay.
and but yeah, and then the generic stuff. We had to one of the chillers went down. We ended up having to bring in a rental for the summer, and
So you've done hospital work too?
a little bit, yeah.
Like a little bit? Yeah, because we do, like I said, we try to stick to the kitchen because that's our specialty, and I will,
Hmm.
stick to it. Um, but yeah, they'll have another company that come in that does like the chiller work, and I don't know. I assume they do the other stuff that we kind of got away from because there's just it's everywhere, dude. There's refrigeration. I mean, we need
Yeah,
it for
there's
everything.
so much. And to even have a company that can kind of do everything, like say the kitchen work and the work on the chiller and work on the air handlers and whatever else the equipment they have, it's just too broad. I know a lot of times, big companies try and bring in one company, right? They only want to cut one check a month for maintenance, but it's tough because, I mean, our company's pretty diverse. We're like probably the most diverse company in the city, but I mean, there's even stuff that we really don't kind of look after. And we pretty well lost that hospital contract just because we wouldn't work on the absorption chiller. We kind of
Oh,
omitted it in the quote, but they
yeah.
wanted us to work like all the hospitals in the region. So there was 4 or 5 to have the contract for, but the one main one had an absorption chiller, and we're like, you know what, we're just not confident working on it. So he kind of said, we'll work on our quote is based on everything minus that, and
Yeah.
they end up going with a different company. So
Yeah, and it happens.
it's hard to be diverse because you got to carry so much more equipment and everything,
Oh, my van is packed to the
And there's that
brim.
expectation, like if you're going to work on this, that you need to keep those kind of parts in your truck. So
Yeah.
next thing you know, you're running a 20-foot QB and you still don't have enough stuff.
I was gonna say my van is packed to the brim, like, because I had talked to the guys recently about doing like residential and stuff, right? Because like I'm like, oh, like, during our slow times it might help, but like the amount of extra stock I would need and real estate in my van, that's like I'm like, man, I'm really comfortable where I'm at right now.
Hmm.
And this year ended up being like super busy for us, so I haven't even circled back to that. But yeah, it's gonna be hard because of like we do what we do. That's what we stock. That's what we are best at. That's what we thrive in because
Yeah.
like like I said, I do the refrigeration stuff. I happen to do AC if they ask me to do it. Um, but yeah, doing other stuff is it's not easy because we tried it in the beginning, taking everything that came our way
Well,
and
sometimes you get yourself in trouble too, because then you get into a mess and then you're locked into it, right? And bit of liability and your name's on the line. And I mean, we kind of always joke like the problem with our company is that we just never say no. Like when we were growing, so like say like when I started back in 2005, It was myself, the two owners, like two of the original owners, and there was like six of us, and now we're up like 150-ish. Like that's with office staff and stuff too. So they've grown exponentially. But when they were smaller and growing, like we just wouldn't say no. So we had contracts with like like property management companies, and they would give us, their portfolio, and it's like we didn't want anybody else coming in the building. So if they asked us to do anything, we would do it, like piping wise or whatever. We had the resources, or we would sub it out sometimes if we had to. And it just kind of kept us in the building. And then they're like, "Oh, you guys can do this. Well, how about you do this?" Right? Plumbing and sheet metal, and and then everything around all the equipment.
It took us a few years, but we found our fine line, and that's where we stay.
Yeah, and if you're busy enough and you don't need to take on that uncomfortable work, it's not
I
work.
guess I was worried like during our downtime about that, but like I said, every year we've just been getting busy. Like, you know, uh, even here, I think the trades in general, I mean, after the pandemic has skyrocketed now because I'm seeing so much construction, so many new buildings going up, housing, apartments, everything in my area is thriving. And I think it's just across the board everywhere. Like everything's coming back up and skyrocketing the trades. That's why I would love to just get it out more because when I was younger, this was not an option. I think you said the same thing. Like nobody, I don't know if it was talked about enough, but like it was frowned upon. Like you were, they were talking about like degrees and getting into business stuff and all that. Nobody
Mhm.
ever talked about the HVAC guy or electrician.
Yeah, well, even there was a school, like when I grew up, there was a school, and basically the kids that kind of couldn't make it, they sent them to this high school, and it was a trade school, right? And it was kind of like, oh, you're going to that school, and they would teach you, they called it life skills, and you would get trades and stuff. And now it's kind of funny because now they're starting to say, oh, you know what, maybe the trades guys aren't so dumb after all, and you know it's can be a tougher life. You got to make sure you take care of your body and stuff like that, because it's sometimes physically demanding. And but
Oh yeah.
overall, I mean, it's a career, and it's great. It's been good for me and my family and many.
It's steady money too, because like I said, I was able, even though I didn't make much, I was able to buy a house, buy vehicles,
Yeah,
everything I needed. My kids have everything they need. And it's just because I had a steady check. I never had to worry about getting work.
yeah, I mentioned earlier, right? I mean, I graduated in 1989, and I've never been laid off. I've
Oh,
had work.
I've seen
So
guys even in the trades that have been laid off, I guess, or whatever it is. But like
it depends.
you,
Like, so I'm fortunate with this company. Like,
yeah,
I always say, like, we're always busy, and in the slow times, or sorry, in the hot and cold spells, we're busier.
yeah.
So it's like, we're
No, but
never slow in the
even
down
if
times.
even if they are laid off, usually they get a job right, the next day or that week. Like it's not that hard to find something.
I really like mentoring the young kids, or inexperienced, or I shouldn't say young, because a lot of times guys get into the trade at an older age. But
Well,
I really
how
like
many
mentoring.
years have you been in the trade? I don't think I asked that.
So I started like my electrical in like 89, and then it was like 98-ish is when I started in the HVAC side. But yeah, for the young guys, they're like, I don't know, you hear other guys and they're saying, oh, this apprentice is no good, he doesn't ask any questions. And I'm like, okay, but did you, maybe he's nervous, maybe he, you can't ask what you don't know. I said, like, are you asking him the questions, starting the conversation? Well, I don't know, you never asked me any questions. But it's like, okay, but you start the conversation. Don't just say the guy didn't ask any questions so he doesn't understand. But you know, there's lots of people with lots of knowledge, and I know it's intimidating sometimes, but definitely, don't be afraid to ask the questions. Um, it's a great career. If that guy doesn't want to answer your questions, then hopefully you work with another guy that does. Like, don't get discouraged just because one guy's you know,
An
doesn't like
ass.
teaching people. But yeah, because like I say, come work with me. I love teaching guys. It's great. And,
No,
always some guys get.
we need more of that because that's what I tell people too is like the whole like who you ride with or your mentor, whatever it is,
Mhm.
that's important too because that's where you learn, what to do or not to do, and what you're gonna build your habits
Hmm.
around, right? Because I've had
Yeah.
guys, or I've worked with guys, right, that have bad habits. I've worked with guys that I trust and I know that they know how to fix things, or I can ask them anything.
But those guys, you can tell like a good, like a journeyman that's really confident will let you do the work because he
Hmm.
knows he's not going to let you mess up. Whereas you get some of the guys that maybe, they're not as quite confident in their own stuff and stuff. So they're always like, okay, well, just let me do it and, kind of show you. But yeah, when you get with the guys, like, you know, you can tell the guys that are confident because again, they let the apprentices do the work and they get better experience that way. And it's tough because now I find in the trades, it's they throw you out on your own too early. So,
Oh yeah.
first year you kind of be working with guys and then you get a bit of experience. They're like, okay, well, now they're learning their own bad habits because they don't know, you don't know what you don't know and you just do what's comfortable. And then they work with other guys that are apprentices and, they both got, into bad habits because they didn't understand the risks of whatever. But I think you really need to bring him in with a seasoned guy and say, listen, hey, it seems easier that way, but you can't do it that way because this is what's going to happen, for
No,
safety
it
wise or
it
even.
took me a while to get comfortable, like being on my own or even talking to the customers, right? There's a
Mhm.
lot that goes into it. And then like, what do you do if you screw up? Like you don't know what to do if you're new.
Own up to it. It is what it
Yeah.
is, like,
Yeah,
I
but
think a lot of customers will respect you more if you own up to it than
that's what I always tell people. Yeah.
sometimes you can hide it. But other times, yeah, if it's a big one. I mean, I flooded a building bad. And I'm like, he comes up the roof or up onto the room and I'm squeegeeing water down the drain. And I'm like, dude, it was me. So
How
whatever,
did that
the
happen?
drain backed up. I had to switch over those two towers. So I was cleaning the one cooling tower and they were inside the building. So I went into the other room, switched the tower over, but the check valve didn't hold. So it
Mm,
backfilled the one that I was going to clean. And it was just a bad design of the room because they built like a kind of a retaining wall over top of the drain. And yeah, so it overflows and then it goes down kind of the outside wall of the building and floods like 2 floors below. But it had just happened like, a few months before then. So, but the guy told me to get him to switch the valves over, but I was confident enough. I'm like, oh, I'll switch over. But so he was mad. He's like, oh, I told you to let me do it. I'm like, okay, but I knew. Anyways, I said, listen, just let me get this water out of here. So that was fine. He said at the end of the day, he's like, yeah, you know what? He's, I appreciate you saying it was you. And I'm like, well, I got a squeegee in my hand. What am I going to say? Right. Like, it was me. Like, so he says, there's so many people that would just say it wasn't him. And oddly enough, I ran into him in a job like years later. We went into a building and I'm like, hey, weren't you in that like sprint building? He's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, maybe I shouldn't say anything. He says, oh yeah. He says, I recognize you. He says, you know what? I still respect you for
that
owning up to that.
man, that
So,
is one thing that I've said because like I just mentioned, like I mean, you're gonna make mistakes. It's inevitable. Everybody does them. I still do them. So when that happens, like even just dealing with customers, it's always good to be honest and upfront because like when I started, I guess I was worried, oh, they're gonna get mad at me. They're not gonna give me any work, whatever it is. But like, you know, the fact is that they're gonna respect you. They're gonna appreciate that you were honest with them. That's always what I tell people is like, I mean, you're gonna screw up. Just let the customer know that this didn't work or something happened. Whatever it is you need to tell them, they're gonna appreciate you more for that and being on upfront versus you like, oh yeah, like everything's fine, everything, we'll get it going soon, and like you're
mhm,
over there like panicking because you don't know what to do or whatever. Just tell them. I mean that, like you
yeah,
said, you got respect out of it. You owned up to it, and that's the way to go about it.
mhm. Yeah, and it's, even just being able to talk to the customer, rather than just running away and stuff. You've mentioned before on your podcast that just understanding what customers are like and being, I try and be good when certain buildings I go to all the time, I'll try and remember what coffee they have. Like back in the Palm
Oh
Pilot
yeah.
days, I'd have a list of what they, I'd call them up and say, hey, Joe, I'm coming to your building. Can I bring you a double double or whatever? Right. I remember which guys had cottages, which guys had boats and stuff like that, and
I,
it was
I
always just a,
was I was so bad about that when I started. Like I was like, no, I'm just gonna do my work and get out, right?
Hmm.
And I started paying more attention to how my dad does it, how he does things, right? Like, oh, he knows everybody. He knows, like you said, their
Mhm.
interests. He catches up with them when he goes in there. And I don't know, like I always seemed or I always looked at it like a waste of time, right? Because I'm like, I just got to do my work, get to the next call, this, whatever it is. But like that part of it is important to, talking to your customers. And I thought it was just like residential, that you have to do that. But commercial is the same way. You got to talk to the managers. It makes
Yeah.
everything better, and they're gonna keep you around because they trust you.
Yeah. It's not even the buildings. Like even so we've got like minimal parking in Toronto, like for above ground. So when I used to run a full size van, like it was tough to find parking and it's even worse now. But I had this one lot where the guy was really good. And if you were in there early, you could get a spot, but you show up for a service call in that area for like 11 o'clock, like the lot was full. So I would always try and go around the block or whatever. But he'd see me and he'd actually wave me in and he'd move a car for me because I would talk to him every time I went back to my van. I'd be, hey, I'm just running over to the coffee shop. Can I grab you a coffee or whatever? And he never wanted coffee, always wanted croissant. But he said to me the one day, he's like, you look at this lot. He says, all these people that come in and out every day. He says, you're one of about 6 that actually talk to me, like actually have a conversation. Like, I mean, he told me that his brother was killed and he was looking after his brother's kids and stuff like that. And, that goes a long way. Like, that kind of
Yeah,
thing.
and you never know. Like, I mean, it's interesting to talk to people just because like he opened up to you about different things that he had going on, but like you also never know who you're talking to because in my situation, if it's a cook or a manager or whatever it is, they move, they have a different location. That like, oh, I want you to service our other location, or they moved up to management and they want to hire you for something else. Like all that helps you too, and like getting a parking spot for yourself helps too.
Yeah. Well, that's how like our company grew so much on like the comfort cooling side. So my like the one owner, he was like a train with me. He was actually the guy that talked me into coming over to the service department from the automation. And so he had such a good rapport with his customers in the buildings he was in. So basically, the guys were like day porters, like just light bulb changers back in the day. And then they moved up the ranks. Now those are the guys that have like an area that are still remember Rico, the owner, and saying, hey, come and look after our buildings because he built up such a good reputation, 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah,
So,
that's how my
it
dad
carries
is.
on.
That's how my dad is. Everybody knows my dad, and everybody's like, I want him and this and that. That's how we
Mhm.
got a lot of our work. It helps a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. It
All
goes a
right,
long way for sure.
all right, man. I had
I'm
something
stealing too
else.
much of your
No,
time.
it's fine because like I prefer to have more than not to have enough. But uh, I had something else, but I completely forgot. I appreciate you for coming on and taking the time, man. I've been following you for a long time, so I enjoy seeing what you got going on and getting to talk to you, and sit down.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it's been good. I like I like talking HVAC. So
I mean, that's kind of why I do this. It's just a way to talk more HVAC with guys. I get to sit down for a little bit. Thanks again for coming out and everybody watching and listening. I appreciate y'all for tuning in. We'll see you guys next time.